Hi, good morning. Thank you all so much for being here this morning, and huge thanks to Ziksa for hosting me today. My name is Rose Hegele, and I'm a classically trained soprano currently based in Boston, Massachusetts. I specialize in the performance of contemporary classical music and exploring the full range of human vocal expression. I fluidly blend together traditional classical singing with precisely controlled vocalizations, ranging from vocal fry and whispering to screaming, pitched inhalation, and many more, integrating them into meaningful musical performances. A huge part of my work is collaboration with living composers and diverse instrumentations, ranging from solo and duo works to pieces with orchestra and electronics. Collaborating with other musicians and artists is my absolute favorite part of being a singer. I love working with others, creatively problem solving with them, exploring new sound worlds, and exploring my role as a vocalist in different ensemble contexts. This presentation focuses on 4 collaborations, 2 pre-COVID-19 and 2 mid-COVID-19, and examines their different processes and challenges. First up, I would like to start with discussing Julia Werntz's Kaspoleo melea. So, Kaspoleo melea is a microtonal vocal trio written by Boston-based composer Julia Werntz, and it sets erotic fragments by Sappho and Plato, using modern Greek pronunciation, even though it's written in ancient Greek. So Julia employs microtonal notation, and for those of you who don't know, let's take 2 pitches. So you have a C and you have a C sharp, but did you know that you could actually divide the C and C sharp into smaller components? So, and there's a whole world of pitches in between those 2 notes. And it's the same for every single semitone in a scale. So being a Western classical trained vocalist, typically I work with 12 tones in an octave. However, Julia divides an octave into 72 tones. So microtones, while they're not mostly used in Western music, they are used throughout the world in different musical cultures, and it's already part of their vocabulary. Julia employs microtones as a tool for expressivity. She writes, "I am excited by the expressive power such contours, such intervals can have in melody and harmony, and by their ability to form melodic contours that feel natural and nuanced." The cycle elicits many vocal timbres from the singer: vibrato, straight tone, breathy sound, and noted inhalations. The main challenge, though, with this piece is how do you execute music requiring extreme precision on a naturally imperfect instrument with expressivity and learn how to hear and perceive microtones when all of the singers are used to singing in 12 equal temperament. Not to mention, personally, I find that when I sing microtonal music, because my brain and body are both working so hard and my body's not really used to singing pitches that are in between those 2 semitones, I get vocally and mentally fatigued a little bit more easily. And finally, while one of the singers I worked with, Stephanie, she and I both have perfect pitch, which means if you play a pitch, we can tell you what it is. Da, A, A440 to be exact. In microtonal music, perfect pitch is not exactly useful because we're not trained to use our ears to hear that precisely. And so oftentimes when I'm singing microtonal music, it feels like I am in the middle of an ocean on a boat and I have no idea where I am. And yet that sensation can be really, really freeing at times. So the process of learning this piece, on my own, I practiced the works separately and slowly. And so I worked with a tuner that actually displayed the microtones, and it gave me a visual representation that allowed me to tune them extremely precisely. Having this visual representation of my sound enabled me to internalize the correct pitches far more quickly and accurately. Also, Julia, the composer, very kindly sent along MIDI files, and once I had sung along with my own part, I put on the MIDI files for the soprano, Stephanie Lamprea, and the mezzo, Katherine Growdon's parts, and I sung along with those, basically to ensure that I was tuning correctly to them. In rehearsal, when all of us got together after doing this individual practice, we approached the piece by starting big. So looking at where the tempos shifted, looking at the larger phrases, how our parts worked with each other, coordinating our entrances, just to ensure that we built some type of structure. Then we focused on the smaller details. So dynamics, what volume you're singing at. Timbre, when to use vibrato. So an timbre, which actually in some cases might make the microtone a little bit messier and less precise versus not. We tuned the microtones very precisely. We isolated specific harmonic moments to ensure that we were creating the correct harmonies. Also, Julia proved to be a really, really important guide throughout this process. Because she's really used to working in 72 equal temperament, she was able to hear inaccuracies that we might not have been able to pick up. Also, as Julia uses microtones for their expressive properties, focusing on the meaning of the words that we were singing and how to create an artistically fulfilling performance actually meant that the microtones became more precise. Personally, I find that if I just experience microtones as this intellectual thing without seeing how they're applied to art, strangely enough, they're less accurate and less embodied. So really combining expressivity and emotion with this precision actually helped create a much more compelling performance. Another interesting thing about this process is that it actually occurred over the course of several months. I first performed movements 1 and 2 in October 2018 at the Berklee College of Music. And then we had the world premiere of the full work in February 2019 as part of an artist residency at Clark University. We recorded and performed the set again in March 2019. And then most recently, in February 2020, we got together and we performed the work at the New England Conservatory. While the first performance was strong, we have really been able to refine the interpretation over the past 2 years of living with the piece. And each time we perform it, it gets stronger. The pitches are more accurate and embodied, and we're able to make stronger artistic choices because we're no longer worried about basic things like, are we singing in time? Do we get the tempo? Are we singing the correct pitches? And also, I found with the first performance, I was laser focused on my own part, and I was trying to execute everything so precisely and correctly that I wasn't quite as aware of what the three of us were doing as a whole. And so having this awareness of both what Stephanie was doing as the first soprano and Katherine was doing as the mezzo around me, it really helped me to connect with them. And I feel like the three of us became this one organism of amazing sound. Finally, as part of the collaborative process, it was really important for me to know my own role throughout. So first of all, my main role in this as a performer is to act as a conduit between what's going on in Julia's brain, between the sound world she hears, and making sure that that sound world comes out to you, and so that you get to experience what's going on inside her mind. In the ensemble, being the middle part, my purpose really was to be the glue between Stephanie's beautiful high phrases and Katherine's gorgeous grounding mezzo part. And so being the glue, I really tried to listen to both of them and ensure that both of them just had this grounding upon which they could rely throughout the piece. And so in general, what I would say for all of you in approaching your own collaborations, it's really important to know your own roles within it and also everyone else's roles so that you can problem solve together effectively. I really hope that you enjoy Kaspoleo Melea. Here it is. Next up, we have one of my favorite pieces of all time, Kian Khalilian's تماشای تلوع خورشید, with poetry by Abbas Kiarostami and dedicated to his memory. So the instrumentation for this is something called a Pierrot ensemble. So it's flute, clarinet, violin, viola, cello, piano, and voice. And it's called this after a specific instrumentation that Arnold Schoenberg, a 20th century composer, invented. And the title Pierrot comes from his cycle Pierrot Lunaire, which was the first song cycle piece ever to use this instrumentation. So the text for this poem by Abbas Kiarostami translates to, the spider stops and takes a moment's break to watch the sunrise. The poem inspired the piece, though Kian does not necessarily word paint throughout. It more inspired the piece's atmosphere and musical development, which you'll hear. And at the end, that sunrise that was mentioned in the poem, you'll really, really experience that musically. Kian does just such a beautiful job with that. The ending both reveals and ties together the poem. Musically, the piece employs extended techniques in the voice and instruments. So quite literally, I start the piece by saying ankabut, which means spider, but I inhale and exhale the poot. Kian also has me using sh and ch sounds throughout and breathing through my teeth like and creating all of these really, really interesting textures. In the instrumental parts, the flute uses a lot of air tones and flutter tones, so a timbre, and in the violin and cello, circular bowing and a sul ponticello timbres are used to really make the piece come alive and explore all these gritty and wonderful textures. Also, the piece requires me to play percussion, so you'll hear me playing a drum in the middle of it, which is really exciting. Kian says about the piece, through the extensive depictions of spiders in mythology and folklore, it is clear that humanity sees itself in the spider. The spider has developed a reputation as a trickster, menace, bringer of terror, but has also been depicted as a weaver, creator, spiritual being, source of good and everything in between. Its complexities and constant movements throughout cultures and multiple stories weaves a fascinating and vivid image of humanity. The wild, rapid, and often chaotic movement of a spider contrasted against the sun, in my mind, evoked an image of humanity, with all its intricacies and struggles and fluctuations, moving towards the sun, a grounding force and a source of warmth and light. Beautiful. So our main challenge with this was, how do we as performers collaborate with the composer to realize their vision of a piece? And for Kian, how does he translate his musical ideas onto the page? So the process of this was twofold. The first performance of تماشای tolúe خورشید occurred in September 2019 at the Berklee College of Music's Alumni Composers Recital. The piece was put together extremely quickly. There was only an hour of rehearsal total, and we had a conductor for this performance. Even though the piece came together very, very, very fast, Kian remarked to me recently that he was very surprised by all of the beautiful moments in that first performance, as was I. It was a really, really special experience. The second performance, and you'll get to experience this recording in a little bit, took place in February 2020 at Clark University and was actually performed alongside Arnold Schoenberg's Pierrot Lunaire, which I mentioned earlier. In this case, we had a lot more time to work with the piece, so we had 3 to 4 rehearsals with Kian giving very specific feedback to us, and rather than having a conductor, we decided to do the piece unconducted. And so throughout this process, there were various challenges and problems that we solved together, and it was a really, really fun and engaging process overall. So the main thing was notation. So for Kian, how to effectively translate what he's hearing in his mind to the page. So Kian and I recently talked on Wednesday, and he said that notation asks the performer to perform a very specific action, and this ask requires intimacy and vulnerability. How a piece is notated reflects how it will feel to perform. The way music feels to perform is just as important as the sound itself. Kian uses a lot of extended techniques in the instruments, and typically at the beginning of a piece you have a notation guide, because some of these things that he's asking us to do might not be standard in terms of musical notation. And while Kian did have a guide at the beginning of his piece, we still had a lot of questions about how exactly to evoke the sounds that he was asking for on the page. So as part of this process, Vanessa, our wonderful flautist, actually met with Kian separately to go over the notation and clarify the sound and timbre that he was looking for. The meeting really, really helped with both of them. Vanessa was really able to realize Kian's compositional intent, and for Kian, this really helped him think of some clearer ways to notate what he was hearing in his mind. And so this process of asking, of this dialogue, of trying things out, it really helped the piece to come alive, and it made a very convincing performance ultimately. The second issue is time perception. So as the piece, as you'll hear, it feels very, very fluid. So as a result, it's very easy to lose the sense of pulse. And the first time we played it, we started trying to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, but then eventually we ended up slowing down a lot because we were not really feeling that internal part, that internal pulse. And so Kevin, our pianist, he encouraged us to play with a metronome, and that really, really helped us figure out how our smaller musical gestures really work together and dovetailed, and it gave us a better sense of that internal pulse so that we could push and pull the tempo a little bit. Another part of it was trying to figure out how our timbres work together. And so oftentimes when you're learning a piece for the first time, at least I find I'm oftentimes so focused only on what I'm doing that I don't really hear what the larger ensemble is doing. And it's hard to, for instance, figure out how to match my timbre to the clarinet, for instance. I'm just so focused on getting the notes and rhythms out that being aware of what everyone else is doing and how my parts fits in, it's not always easy. And so I feel like actually getting that rhythmic precision helped us to get a sense of what the other parts were doing. It helped us to feel more connected to one another, and at least it gave me a much broader sense of the piece rather than this focus on my tiny little part. Once we were comfortable and had a better understanding of the timing, we then took the metronome away, which allowed for that fluidity and freedom to coalesce with our refined precision. Finally, as we were working on conducted, we had to figure out cueing. So typically in chamber music, you have different instruments look around and cue each other. And so someone might take on the role as conductor. Sometimes we might see Vanessa doing a little bit of conducting with her flute, for instance, and Natalie conducting with her violin. And as a result, we really had to be present with each other, know when to lead, know when to follow, know when to look at each other. And that was a huge part of making the piece come together successfully without someone standing in front of us going 1, 2, 3, 4. The final challenge with this piece is the language. So تماشای tolúe خورشید was my second time singing in Farsi. And as a singer, it's really, really, really important to know both the meaning of the words and the pronunciation in order to let the meaning really come through clearly and strongly, and for the audience to understand the emotion behind those words. And so, as I didn't have much experience with Farsi, I met with Kian for an entire hour. We went through every single word's pronunciation and discussed the meaning. And this was huge because it really gave me insight into the poem, into how the poem was kind of the catalyst for the whole piece to come together musically. And it really meant that emotionally, I was able to connect to the words that I was singing. Overall, on every single level, the تماشای tolúe khorsheed was such a beautiful collaboration. And I really loved the fact that all of us were able to be so present with each other, to bring up problems, but to work together to solve them effectively. And to me, this is what a successful collaboration is about. It's about being respectful of everyone involved. In our case as performers, doing our very best to honor Kian's compositional intent. And then for Kian, working with us to ensure that we felt comfortable with his notation and the sound world that he was trying to create. This respect and this willingness to problem solve and think creatively and listen to one another made a really wonderful performance experience, which I hope that you'll enjoy. Thank you so much again for listening. That was Kian Khalilian's tamásháye, tolúe, khorsheed, one of my favorite works to perform and so beautiful. I especially hope that you enjoyed the sunrise at the end. Next up, we are going into COVID-19 collaborations, which has been super, super interesting and super fun. So, Sirens by Juhi Bansal. It's a really, really amazing piece, originally written for a performance installation on the tall ships when they were in California a few years ago. The instrumentation is 3 singers, so 2 sopranos and mezzo-soprano and electronics, and also the piece was written for dancers. And so in its original iteration, the singers were on one tall ship, kind of introducing the scene, making the scene happen, and then you would have these really long choreographed dance interludes with the dancers interacting with the ship. And then also there was a fixed media electronics part as well. So in this performance, as you can see, there are so many layers. So it was really interesting to figure out how to make all of them work in COVID-19. And so that's a little bit about the piece, but a bit of background about how this very specific collaboration came to be. So my colleague, Brian Mark, a pianist and composer and video installation artist currently based in New York City, he and his fluid ensemble in process, we decided to put a virtual concert together that focused on climate change and pieces that either celebrated the beauty of the earth or that addressed and tackled global warming. And so in finding pieces for voice that really fit these themes, I did a ton of research on composers who had written works about climate change. And when I came across Juhi Bansal's Sirens, I thought, oh my goodness, this piece is amazing. In the work, the sirens themselves represent single-use plastics, though Juhi doesn't really, she doesn't really state that in an obvious way, but it's this layer of like these beautiful, alluring figures that really lure, but that also lures to our deaths. And so it was interesting because, as I mentioned before, the piece was written originally for 3 singers and dancers. And yet in COVID-19, I was the only singer involved in this ensemble and process concert. And also, we didn't have any dancers either, nor did we have any tall ships. So we had to do a very, very, very different realization of the piece. Thankfully, when I approached Juhi about it, she was more than willing to create excerpts from the piece for me to sing from, and she was also comfortable with me singing all 3 of the vocal parts. What was important to her, though, was really having this dramatic element in there. So I thought, well, since Brian, the composer and pianist, he also does a lot of video installations for his works, I thought that he would be an amazing collaborator to bring in as well, and that he could make a video installation, which you're about to see, that really highlights the theme of sirens. And so with lots of nautical images, decrepit looking mermaids swimming in the ocean, and a few images of plastic and plastic on beaches, but not done in a very obvious way. We wanted it to be kind of abstracted. And so then, as a result, because I'd approached Juhi about a month before the online performance was set to occur, all of this had to happen really, really, really quickly. She very quickly excerpted this 30-minute work into 6 minutes and 20 seconds. I recorded all 3 of the parts within 2 days, which required some very, very intensive, several hours of just very focused recording work on my end. And then Brian took about a week to make the video. So all in all, really, really fast turnaround. Honestly, high stakes, high pressure, but super fun. And when I was asking Juhi how she felt about this collaboration, she said, one thought I had around our project was that, because of COVID, I think we're all feeling a kind of urgency to make creative opportunities and find ways to make and share music. This was something that really struck me when you first reached out, and something that I hope will carry forward even after life returns to normal. And I suppose as a corollary to that urgency, we're all working faster than we typically do. And there's a real sense of freedom in that, in not planning 2 or 3 seasons ahead, but instead moving rapidly from idea to making contact to putting together a final video to share. One of the things I love about that is it helps us jump on that creative spark while it's still fresh. Your performance in Brian's video to me encapsulated that kind of energy. Thank you so much for listening, and please enjoy Juhi Bansal Sirens with a video installation by Brian Mark.
Come closer, sailor. Come closer, closer, closer. Moor your ship and hear our song. This is the music nobody knows. This is the music nobody knows. This is the music nobody knows. For anyone who heard it is The scene is lonely and dreary. The scene is restless, uneasy. You see quiet, quiet, quiet. Our isle is green and breezy.
Thank you so much. That was Juhi Bansal's Sirens with vocals by me and video installation by Brian Mark. We are now nearing the end of this lecture, and the final collaboration that I will be presenting on is Marti Epstein's Different Kinds of Light, which I collaborated on with cellist Nick Politi. So a little bit about the piece. Different Kinds of Light was written for the Diogenesis duo in 2016 and is a voice and cello duo and sets poetry by Jackson McClough, an American poet, performance artist, composer, and playwright known to most readers of poetry as a practitioner of systemic chance operations and other non-intentional compositional methods in his work, which he experienced first in the musical work of John Cage, Earl Brown, and Christian Wolff. This piece is absolutely beautiful. I first heard it at 2018 at the Boston Conservatory, where I went to grad school and where Marti currently teaches. And it's really, really lovely. The voice and cello are in canon throughout, so repeating each other's lines. At other times, there's indeterminate notation for the cello towards the end of the piece. And Marti evokes all sorts of really beautiful textures from the instrument, including that gorgeous swampant, really, really, really quiet notation. It's a really, really, really stunning piece overall. So this collaboration came to be because Nick Politi and I originally met each other in the summer of 2018 at the Cortona Sessions for New Music in Cortona, Italy. And we immediately hit it off. We became super good friends. We both have perfect pitch, so we were able to relate about that, about the types of music that we like to perform, and we pretty much just nerded out about music. And we kept in contact a little bit after that, but not as much. Recently, this past March, I posted some videos from my senior recital at the Boston Conservatory on YouTube, and Nick saw these and he was like, "You're really good. I want to collaborate with you." And remembering how well we'd gotten along at Cortona and just knowing him as a person and composer, I thought, yes, we should collaborate. And so we started this collaboration during COVID-19 in virtual times in two totally different states. I'm currently in Massachusetts and Nick is finishing up his senior year at Oberlin in Ohio. So when we were thinking about voice cello works that we wanted to work on together, I immediately thought of Marti Epstein's Different Kinds of Light. I mean, I'd fallen in love with the work when I first heard it at BOCO, and it had been something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. So having this opportunity to really carve out time to do it was awesome. When we asked Marti about whether or not she would feel comfortable with us collaborating on the piece during COVID-19, she said, "Ideally, I would prefer a live performance, but at the same time, it's so important that we keep music happening right now. And so yes, by all means, collaborate on this work." Nick and I, over the past few months, that was about in May, we had a few months where we were busy with other projects, so we didn't communicate with each other as much. But then in August, we both rehashed the idea of bringing this collaboration to life. And so in about September, we started recording the different movements and we started recording them virtually. This was a big challenge though, because one of the issues with COVID-19 is that real-time rehearsing, so being in the same space with someone else and real-time recording is no longer a thing due to safety issues. And also not to mention the fact that Nick and I live many, many, many miles apart from each other in two different states. So what we had to do is Nick would record the cello parts for certain movements, send them to me, and then I would record my vocal part on top of that. One of the things though is that Marti, she said she wanted these recordings and this iteration of Different Kinds of Light to be as natural and close to a live performance as possible. And so throughout this time, you've probably experienced several artists or musicians recording very specifically with click track with like a 1, 2, 3, 4, going in their ears at all times so they stay in tempo. But for Different Kinds of Light, Marti wanted fluidity. So what we did is Nick would record and he would just feel the piece very fluidly, taking time here and there, when he sent me his recording, I would record a counting track. So saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, lining up with where his beats were in the measure. And then I would record on top of that counting track, which was a bit more naturalistic than a click track because it allowed for that flexibility of tempo shifts to be in there. And it was a really, really fun process. I mean, hard in the sense that, of course, being together in the same space, getting to collaborate in the same room, getting that real-time feedback is really fun. And it's something that I love about collaboration. But also at the same time, given the fact that we're in a global pandemic and thousands of miles apart, well, maybe not thousands, but many miles apart, I think it was really the best that we could do in this circumstance. One of the challenges, though, is because Nick had recorded it very freely, whenever he redid a few of the recordings, and as a result, because I recorded to his recordings and he did not use a click track, I would have to re-record as well. But at the same time, I do feel like that really gave us an opportunity to refine the work and make it closer to a live performance with that naturalistic aspect. I will say as well that COVID-19, due to the pandemic fundamentally, we were able to start this collaboration. And it's interesting because had the pandemic not happened, Nick and I probably would not have even considered collaborating virtually. It just wouldn't have been something that came to mind. So in a sense, while the pandemic is really horrible and tough, especially being an artist, I will say that I am very grateful that Nick and I are working together and that we've started this collaboration, which will definitely continue even into the post-COVID era. The recording that you'll hear is definitely a work in progress. This is all the work that we've done so far, but we're planning to re-record a few of the movements and then actually release them online on streaming platforms in January. So keep your eyes out for that. And also one of our future plans is we're really hoping to collaborate with a visual artist who will create art to really evoke the colors of each movement. I mean, it's such a beautiful piece, so many different musical colors, and the text as well with different kinds of light. We both feel that it would really, that having a visual component would really bring the piece alive in a very different sense as well. Thank you so much, and I hope that you enjoy Marti Epstein's Different Kinds of Light with me singing and Nick Politi on cello.
sky's light.
Marti and Nick, thank you so much for all of your guidance on different kinds of light. What a beautiful piece, and what an honor to be able to perform. To all of you who attended today, thank you so much for being here, for listening to me discuss all these very different collaborative processes. As I mentioned, collaboration is truly one of the reasons why I do music. I love the energy of being in a space with other musicians, or a virtual space, problem solving together, bringing something to light, just making music come alive with other people. And so to all of my collaborators who are featured today, thank you so much for all of your work on these pieces. Thank you so much for your attention to detail, for being there, for helping to solve musical issues, and also for your wonderful personalities as well. I'm going to close by offering this thought on collaboration. Collaboration it's part of being a human, and it's integral to every form of work on this planet, whether it's art, whether it's science, whether it's business, whether it's anything really. And what's important to me in a collaboration is the ability to listen, the ability to hear perspectives different from your own, the ability to take feedback in, the ability to be respectful, and also, if you have the chance to choose collaborators to work with, choosing people whose strengths might be a bit different from your own. It's so important to have people whose personalities complement one another and who can really help each other to grow and to make music, art, scientific discoveries at the highest, most supportive level possible. And I will also say that in collaboration, being able to hear different perspectives is really, really important. And so as all of you go forward, as all of you collaborate, just keep listening, be mindful, allow space for others to speak, and be respectful of one another always, and create an environment that supports and where all ideas can flourish. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Ziksa for hosting this. And please stay healthy and well and keep safe. Goodbye for now.